So we're going to be learning different Mamorim throughout the year. I'll give you a list of the Mamorim that we're going to cover. But the first thing we're going to start with is this Mimer. So this is a Mimer from Likutei Torah. Likutei Torah. I'll try to remember tomorrow to bring it upstairs and show you. Likutei Torah is Maimorim from the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe has two svarim. One is called Torah Or, one is called Likutei Torah. It's interesting because they have two separate names, like Dora or Maya. I'm not sure who got the water today. Laura is taking over. Okay. So even though they're two separate names, but they're really one book, and it's two volumes. The reason for the two separate names is not 100% clear, but what happened was that the first volume was printed, and those are Maimorim on every parsha, from Bereshis through the book of Shmos. And then they were going to print the second volume, which is Maimorim on Vayikra, Midbar, Dvarim, and Shir Hashirim. But at that time, there was a movement called the Enlightened Movement. These were the Jews who were becoming more secular and more assimilating, and they were fighting the Orthodox Jews, especially the Hasidic Jews. So they went to the government and they told the government that the Hasidim are printing books, and these books are having ideas that go against, the modern way of living and the modern culture and against the government. As a result of that, they closed down all the printing presses that print Torah books. It was for about 10 years it was closed. So therefore they couldn't print the second volume. So they printed the second volume 10 years later. When they printed the second volume, for whatever reason, the Tzemach Tzedek, he was in charge of the printing, the third Rebbe of Chabad, and he said to change the name to Likutei Torah. So this is a Mimer from the Parsha of Re'eh, as you can see on top of the page, which is the book of Dvarim. So it's the book of Likutei Torah. The content of the Mimer is something very fundamental, as we soon see. It's about what is the deeper significance and purpose of a test. We know that it's a basic concept of Judaism, that there are times that Hashem gives us a test. He tests us. And what is the reason for the test? Why does he do that? On the surface, Hashem tests us to see how loyal we are, how devoted we are, and therefore he sets up certain circumstances that are challenging to see how we will act under those challenging circumstances. And that's the purpose of the test on the surface. And this Mimer is going to explain a deeper reason for the tests, and this is the way it's explained according to Hasidus and Kabbalah. So let's start with the first page. As you know, Mimer, generally speaking, begins with a pasuk. So the pasuk here is a pasuk in the Chumash of Dvarim. So in order to follow this easier, let's turn to page 10 in this booklet. Made a copy of the pasuk so you can see the whole thing. It's really 9, 10, 11. This is, in a sense, the source in the Torah on the subject of tests. On the bottom, it should say page 9. So it starts with saying, if somebody comes that was a prophet or a dreamer, which means he says he saw Hashem in a dream, and Hashem told me to do this and this. In fact, he gives you signs and miracles. Let's continue page 10, 11. And then he comes and he says, being that I'm a messenger from God, Hashem's message is we should go worship other gods. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to this so-called prophet or this dreamer. In other words, he's not true. And why is Hashem allowing this person to do this and to perform miracles to convince you? And the answer is, Ki menaseh Hashem Elokecha Telechu, because God, your God, is testing you to know if you really love Him wholeheartedly. So in other words, here it says clearly, the reason why Hashem tests us is to see if we really love Him. So Hashem allows a person to perform miracles, do things that are supernatural, so people trust Him. And then He comes and says that He's speaking in the name of God, and the message is to go worship idols, chas v'shalom. So Hashem says, don't be convinced and don't follow Him, it's only a test. And what should you do? Acharei Hashem Elokecha Telechu, you should follow and go after Hashem, your God. Likutei Torah, Hashem is the one you should fear. As mitzvahs tishmeru, His commandments you should keep. The koilei tishmo, in His voice you should listen. It's Him, Hashem, that you should serve. And you should attach yourself to Hashem. Here's another goodness. Just want to make you aware to be careful in the back, the staples. Some areas know that they're not bent in as much and they could rip your skin, so be careful. So this is what the pasuk says, you should follow Hashem. Acharei Hashem Elokecha Telechu. And that's how the Mimer begins, with this pasuk. Let's go back to the beginning now. Acharei Hashem Elokecha Telechu. You should follow God. And then it says you should fear Him, you should serve Him. Parat Akosov Shisha Dvarim B'Beidas Hashem. Basically, we see that the pasuk lists 6 things. Each one describes our way of serving Hashem. One is Telechu, follow Hashem. One is Tiro, fear Hashem. One is Tishmeru, observe His commandments. One is B'Keilei Tishmo, listen to His voice. One is Eishes Avedu, you should serve Him. And the 6th one is Sidbakum, you should attach yourself to Him. So actually, this Mimer is a very long one. And in the Mimer, it explains each one of the 6 things. But we're not going to be learning the whole Mimer with all those details. We're going to be focusing mainly on the first part of the Mimer. What is the purpose of the test? What does it say right before this? Ki menaseh Hashem Elokecha Telechu. God tests you to know if you really love Him or not. The Haman, we need to understand, Ma'u ki menaseh. What does it mean Hashem tests you? He doesn't even explain the question. Why not? Because the question is so obvious, there's nothing to explain. What's so obvious? Hashem knows every thought that I have in my head. Hashem reads my heart. And He sees what I'm thinking consciously. He knows what's going on subconsciously. He knows what's going on inside me more than I myself know. Hashem needs a test to know whether I'm loyal or not. He doesn't need a test. He knows that without a test. So what's the purpose of the test? In davening, especially at Rosh Hashanah, we say this so many times, Hashem knows everything. He remembers everything. He sees everything. He's aware of every thought of every single person. So He knows where we're holding. He knows how loyal we are. What does He need to test? Try to imagine if there's a gallon of water there, a gallon. And the person is wondering whether the gallon of water is going to fit into this cup. So he's going to make a test. Put the cup down, take the gallon and pour it into the water and say, if the water fits in, then it's good. If it pours over, then apparently it's not good enough. It's not big enough. I don't need a test. I can see with my eyes. A gallon is too big for this cup. This is 5 ounces or 7 ounces, and a gallon can't fit into a cup of 7 ounces. So if Hashem puts a person to a test, He knows in advance how strong we are if we can handle the test or not. Now the term test is actually found earlier in the Torah. Again, look in the booklet. Let's look here on page 12 and 13. We say this in davening every day. On page 12, Hashem tested Avram. This is the first time you find the term test. It's written differently here because it's a verb. Hashem tested Abraham Avinu. And he told him to take his son to the Akedah. And look at the next page where it's underlined on the bottom. After he passed the test, Hashem said, Ata Yadaiti, now I know, Kirei Elikimata, that you really, truly fear God. Hashem didn't know before how strong Abraham is. Another place you can turn to is on page 14. This is Pirkei Avos, from the Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 5, where it says that Hashem tested Avraham Avinu 10 times to let us know how precious, how dear Avraham Avinu is to Hashem. In fact, this test for the Akedah was the 10th test. So Hashem tested it once and again to see how loyal he is. And the question is, why is it necessary? Hashem knows everything without a test. So now he's going to explain it. I just want to add, this year you're going to be learning Mamar, and the style of the Mimer is very different than other commentaries on Chumash. Usually when you study Chumash, you have a question, and they give you the answer. Question, answer. A Mimer, there's a question, and then the Mimer goes on for who knows how many pages discussing something, and at the end, like 10 pages later, they give the answer. The reason for that is because a Mimer isn't just an answer to a question. Every Mimer is there to give us a perspective on a certain subject. And once you have a new perspective on this subject, then the questions get answered automatically. So usually that's where a Mimer works. First, there's a question. It says, in order to have the understanding of this question, let's discuss this subject, and let's have a deeper perspective on the subject. And once we have the deeper perspective, now we'll go back and we'll see there is no question. Okay, so here the perspective is, what is the perspective of a test and the science? The neshama, before it comes down to this world, the neshama was in a higher spiritual world. We know the difference between the neshama and the guf is a new creation. The parents and the Hashem are sort of all three partners that together they bring the guf into the existence. So before the baby is born and before the mother conceives the baby, there is no guf. The neshama is different. The neshama exists since the beginning of creation. And where is the neshama? It's in heaven. It's in the shamayim, in a spiritual place. And then it comes the time that Hashem says, okay, number 5,223,000, time for you to go downstairs. And they call out the neshama, and the neshama descends and goes into a body. What was the neshama? Where was the neshama before? It was in a higher spiritual world. As it says, Chai Hashem Asher Manati Lefana. Basically saying, I swear in the name of Hashem that I stood in front of him. This is the pasuk in Tanakh. Again, I put this in so you can see it all. The source. Take a look at page 15. It's a pasuk in Malachim. I think these are the words of Elisha, who was a Navi, a prophet. And yes, and Elisha said, Chai Havaya Asher Manati Lefanav, that I stood before him. And the Mefarshim, I mean, there's different commentaries on this, but one that the Alter Rebbe is referring to is, what does it mean, I stood before him? When did he stand in front of Hashem? It means to say, before my neshama came down, I was up there, and I was standing in the presence of Hashem. And over there, godliness was revealed. In fact, in essence, we say this every day, every morning. Again, let's look at page 16. Every morning we describe how the neshama comes down to this world. We say the bracha, Elokai neshama. So look what it says, Elokai, neshama shenasata be, the neshama that you've given me, because the neshama was there before Hashem gives us the neshama, tahirei, it's pure. And then it says, Ata brasa, Ata yitzarta, Ata nefachta be, Ata v'shamra v'kirbi. So it's explained in Chassidus, this is describing the descent of the neshama. How the neshama initially is not Atzilus. Tahirei, it's in a pure world, which is the world of Atzilus. Ata barasa, it came down to the world of Bria. Ata yitzarta, it comes down to the world of Yitzira. Ata nefachta, you blew it into me, that's the world of Asiya, when the neshama is blown into and invested in the body. So the neshama was in a high place, in a pure place. Pure means there's only godliness there, and nothing else. And then the neshama goes down and descends. In this low world, when we say low, we're not talking about physically low. There's no space when you talk about spiritual world, but it means spiritually it's the lowest world. So how do you define high and low when you talk about spirituality? In the physical world, high, low, 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 low. But if you talk about spirituality, there's no space. What does this mean? This world is higher, this world is lower. So the definition of higher and lower in Chassidus is, if it's godliness revealed, it's higher. If it's godliness concealed, it's lower. And being there are many levels and degrees of how much something could be concealed, so there are many levels in godliness. Atzilus is Hashem's presence is revealed completely. In Bria, it's a little bit concealed. In Yitzira, it's more concealed. In Asiya, it's more concealed. And in this world, it's completely, almost completely concealed. So here in this world, Hashem's presence is hidden, the space is hidden. And the neshama is far from Hashem. Again, what does far mean? So little children think Hashem is over there in Shemayim, near Jupiter, Mars, or one of the other planets, and we're down here. It's not miles. Far means, again, spiritually far, not revealed, hidden from us. Why would Hashem do that? In other words, when a person goes somewhere, they're going somewhere to gain something. A person travels to do business, to make money, to live in a better place. Hashem takes the neshama, and instead of taking it to a better place, it takes it to a worse place. What's the point? So tachlis hayirida, the purpose why the neshama comes down is b'shvil and nisyayna shabayla. Imagine. The whole purpose why the neshama comes down is to go through tests. Up there are no tests because everything is clear, everything is open, godliness is revealed, so there are no tests. And the neshama comes down in order to be challenged with the test, and of course to pass the test, to overcome that test. What is the definition of a test? Anything that conceals godliness is a test. Which means, for example, the stalkus chayes v'shefa, when you see the absence of life, a person is sick, that there is weakness in a person's life, that's a test. Because godliness is life, godliness is light, godliness is brightness and warmth and happiness. Anything which is different means concealed godliness. If a person is chas v'sholem, not healthy, or Hashem is withholding money, the person financially is suffering. And this happens to a person here in this world. For When that happens, it conceals godliness. When something goes wrong, a person's questioning, where is Hashem? Well, I don't see Hashem openly because this is going wrong and that's going wrong. And there are things that are preventing me from seeing and feeling godliness from inside and from outside. The Adam Shabbat, the sky of Hashem. This happens to a person that wants to get close to Hashem and wants to serve Him. What does it mean from inside and from outside? The things that block me from getting close to Hashem could either be from inside, my own personal thoughts, my own personal weaknesses, whether I'm feeling lazy, or I'm having doubts, or I feel depressed, or I have issues and questions on what Hashem is doing. That means there's something internal that's blocking me. From the outside means there are things out there that are blocking me, either people or things that are happening that are not letting me study Torah and do mitzvahs. And these are the two possibilities, but all of them are the same thing. They're blocking me, they're concealing godliness. Something's happening which is not letting me get close to Hashem. In fact, the way of the wicked is that they see success. This is one of the biggest concealment of godliness in this world. You see a person's a Russia, a wicked person, he does bad things, and you would expect someone like that should be suffering and not succeeding, and instead they seem to be succeeding more than people that are so much better than them. That's one of the hardest things to digest. It's a pasuk, by the way. In case you think of this question, you're not the first one to think of it. It's an old question. Why are the ways of the wicked successful? In this pasuk, it said, the one we had before, that this man will perform miracles, and he'll come and say, "Go worship idols." In other words, Kleimar, Shasham Gilu Eiz V'Leifus. He shows them that, look, here are people that don't serve Hashem, they're serving idols, and they're being so successful, they're powerful, they have money, they have so much possession, and they're doing great. Bagbos Karnam, Bagdola Bariba Chais. You see that they have a lot of life to them. And that's why they say Yodenu Davka Rama Magbim Kanesha Kinam. I just want to show you again these terms that are in a pasuk. Again, look at the booklet on page 19. It's a pasuk in Chumash, which is also describing what the non-Jews are saying. They sort of tease us, and they're trying to taunt us and saying, Yadeinu Rama, our might is so strong, and therefore not Hashem is involved. When Jews, for example, are defeated by an enemy, it's not that Hashem made it happen because we sinned or had to be, but because they're so strong. Look, we're more powerful than you are. Like Paro was thinking, he has the Jews as slaves for 210 years, so he has the power, and he's the one that's really on top. And the same thing with all the other nations that unfortunately tormented you, tortured you, that they look at themselves and say, you see how powerful we are? We have the power. Look on page 18, you see the pasuk that was referring to. Madua, it's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Madua derech l'shayim sleicha. Why is it that the wicked seem to be prospering, seem to be having it good, physically, financially? They're the ones who become people of power in government, and they seem to be successful. There's another pasuk on page 20 which says that they lift themselves like an eagle. An eagle is a bird that we always use as a mushel for something that flies high. So here too you have the pasuk. Ki sagbia kanesha kinecha misham aritchanu Hashem. If you raise your nest as high as the eagle, I will bring you down from there. That's what Hashem said. In other words, a person is saying, I'm going to do bad things, and I'll be all the way up there. I'll be on top. I'll rule and I'll control other people, and all the things that unfortunately wicked people do. Hashem says, I'll bring you down. But the reason why there's even such a thought that I'll be like an eagle, because we do see that people that are evil people actually succeed in doing what they do. Yes, we know the answer that ultimately it's very temporary. Ultimately, they lose much more than they gain. But what he's saying here, this Mimer, this is part of the test. We don't understand fully Hashem's plan. If we would be Hashem. We can't understand Hashem's plan. But one of the things, this is a test. Hashem does these things to test us. Will we trust Him regardless? Or will we have doubts in Him because of what we see? That here somebody keeps the store closed on Shabbos and he's not making money. And here's somebody keeps the store open on Shabbos and making a lot of money. Here's somebody that's very kind and good-natured and caring and sensitive, and he's sick. And here's somebody who is a bad person, mean person, and makes everybody else suffer, and he himself is healthy and well. And you look at the two people that live on the same block. How does that happen? So these are tests. This is, besides everything else that Hashem has reasons for, part of it is a test. You say the person needs tremendous strength, to stand up to this test. It is not so simple. It's something very difficult, very painful to see. Not to pay attention to anything that's, God forbid, blocking me from connecting to Hashem. And that's why a person is tested. The purpose is that I should overcome the test. So in other words, here we're being introduced to a new concept. Not the purpose of the test is for Hashem to know how loyal I am. In fact, we'll find later some Mefarshim say, no, it's not for Hashem to know, it's for me to know. Sometimes the person himself could be fooling himself and thinking that I'm on a higher level and really you're on a lower level. So Hashem gives you a test, and when you have a test, you can recognize whether you're in a good place or not in a good place. But here he's explaining it's deeper than that. It's not for Hashem to know. It's not just for me to know. But the purpose is Hashem is giving me a test, is an opportunity for me to rise to a higher level that without this test, I would never rise to that level. So Hashem blocks my path. I overcome it. And by overcoming it, I rise to a much higher level. There's a lot of Lashonim for this, because on the surface, we don't see that. But on the surface, a test is a test. It's something which is blocking me, it's getting in my way. So there's a lot of examples for this, and as we go along, we'll mention more of them. But just to think of one simple example, if a person has a weak muscle in their hands or their legs, what do? They go physical therapy. What's physical therapy? They go to a place, and they tell them to lift something that weighs 10 pounds. Lift 10 pounds, they do it 10 times, 20 times, and the muscle gets a little bit stronger. Next time they come, what do? You tell them to lift 10 pounds? No. Next time they come, they tell them to lift 15 pounds. So imagine the person would complain, I don't understand you, it's so hard for me. I finally am able to lift 10 pounds. Why are you making my life difficult? Just give me 10 pounds. But if I give you 10 pounds, your muscle is not going to be strengthened. The only way I can strengthen it is by giving you something that's harder, and you have to lift it, and that's how your muscle becomes stronger. And guess what? Once he lifts 15 pounds, he makes him lift something with 20 pounds. Or a person is running, and he wants to develop the muscles in the legs to be able to run, or to be able to jump. So imagine he's running, and someone has to stick right in the middle and tells him to jump. Why are you doing that to me? Why don't you take away the stick so I can just run straight? If you run straight, you're not going to do any good for your muscles. If you have to jump, you're strengthening the muscle. And every time that you reach a certain point, I lift the stick higher, now you have to jump higher. You have to jump higher. So again, the fact that someone is blocking your path is not because they want to hurt you, not because they want to make life difficult for you, because they want to make you stronger. The same thing is spiritually. Ma? Path. Path. The derech. I'm going this way, and you put a stick in the middle. I should jump over it. The purpose is to make you stronger, not because you want to hurt me. So Hashem puts things in our path that's blocking. And the reason is to make us stronger. And becoming stronger means to reach a level which is called das. Now he's going to explain what does it mean, das. Why is he saying this? Where does that come from? So let's look again in the pasuk, the original pasuk, just to make it clear. So we're going back to the first page, which is page 10 and 11. What does it say there? Hashem, your God, is testing you ladas, to know. Before we translated it to me, Hashem is testing you so he should know. Now he's explaining Hashem is testing you that you should have das. What does that mean? So now he's going to explain what it means to have das. There are different ways and different levels of perceiving godliness, and there's something unique about having das. And when a person is able to overcome a test, it helps them have this das. Behind this means not only to know Hashem, but to know him in a way that you feel it. Das is something which comes from seeing something visually. Oh, she brought me, Mrs. Gaffney brought the list, so we can pass this around. Thank you. So we know from all the chassidus that we learned from Tanya, and in fact we say this every day in davening, Hashem, please give me wisdom. And we ask for three things, Chochmah, Bina, and Das. And that means there are three parts to the brain. There's Chochmah, there's Bina, and Das. And the truth is, if somebody would be studying, the human body, studying a class that you studying the brain, that you will find that the brain has many functions, not just three functions, but all the functions of the brain will fall under these three categories. There's certain things that the brain is memory, the brain is depth, the brain is vast knowledge, the brain is grasping things. These are different parts of the brain. They tell a story about someone, a certain Rav in Israel, that he was able to look at a building and say, there are 400 bricks here in this wall. 400 bricks. And he asked, how could you see in 1 second that there are 400? So he said, if you would look somewhere, you would see 3 bricks. Would you see right away that it's 3? Yeah. If you'd see 4, yeah. So he says, by me, Baruch Hashem, when I look at 400, I see the way you see 3. It's a certain, again, function of the brain to grasp things. And there's so many different functions of the brain. Some belong to Chachma, some come from Bina, and some come from Das. So what we're talking about here is something very unique about Das, especially when it comes to understanding Hashem. And through a test, you're able to develop that part of your brain, the Das, to know Hashem, not only with Chachma, not only with Bina, but with Das. And what is Das? Das means that not only you know it, but you feel it. So, generally speaking, of course, all these things are explained at length in Chassidus, many Mamar, many pages. But what's the general idea? What? So what does it mean? Feel is not seichel, feel is the heart. So obviously there's something in the brain that's also feeling, not just knowing. And The difference is like this, that it's interesting. The halacha is that a boy under the age of bar mitzvah and a girl under the age of bas mitzvah is not obligated or responsible for mitzvahs. We do everything as a part of a training, but at the halacha, responsibility begins from age 12 and 13. And the reason that's given is because that's when the brain becomes fully developed. So people ask a question, but it's not really the case. We know many children that are younger than bas mitzvah and younger than bar mitzvah, and they're very intelligent. And in fact, they're smarter than many adults. So why would children be exempt? Some children are smarter, some children are not. Why are all children exempt? So the interesting thing is, whenever the Gemara talks about children, when I say children in this context, it means under bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, that they don't have the intelligence. You'll never find the Gemara should say that a minor has no chachma or a minor has no bina. It'll always say katan ein lo das, lacking the das. So what does das mean? Das means not only to know it, but to feel it, which is it's a different kind of understanding. It's the kind of understanding that makes me react in a certain way. So if you tell a child, don't stick your finger in this because that can cause electric, like a chas v'shalom, you could be hurt from the electricity there. You tell the child, so don't put your finger in, right? Right. As soon as you turn your head, you're right back in. But he just heard from you that it's dangerous. Don't run across the street because there are cars there, it's dangerous. Okay. As soon as you turn around, whoop, he's out in the street. But he just told him that it's dangerous. I'm talking about a child that understands. The answer is they understand, they don't really get it. There's certain things that people understand, but it doesn't really register. If it doesn't register, it doesn't really affect me practically. So the part of the brain that takes information and absorbs it and allows it to register and really have an impact, that's called das. So it's not when we say feeling, it's not a feeling of the heart, it's actually a feeling in the brain. And not only I know this information, but I know it in a way that it penetrates. And when it penetrates, it has a different effect on the person. So you can have a person that has a lot of chokhmah, knows Hashem with a lot of chokhmah, a lot of bina, but if they don't have das, their knowledge might not have an effect on the way they live their life. And again, one of the examples that I think is also another example of this is, I use this example often, those who've been around for a while have heard it from me before, is that a lot of people have told the story that they had a hard time stopping smoking. And then one day, a doctor showed them, I actually heard this from someone who was visiting a friend that was in the hospital, and unfortunately he had the disease in his lungs, and a doctor walked into the office and he showed them an x-ray. He showed the x-ray of what a healthy lung looks like, and the x-ray of what a lung looks like through the smoking. And after that, he stopped smoking. So someone asked him, and before the doctor showed it to you, you didn't believe him that smoking does damage to the lungs? So I believed, I know doctors, all doctors saying that, I know that it's true. So what happened? When I saw the x-ray, I really believed it. What's the difference between really believing and not really believing? You know what the difference is? If you stop smoking or not. In other words, he heard about it, he understood it, but it was sort of distant. When he saw it with his eyes, it registered. It really penetrated, and it had an effect on him. I'm sure everyone has this experience personally in your life, where you might hear about something, and then at a certain point you say, I knew about it, I heard about it, but it just didn't register until this and this happened. Like this girl told me she got engaged, she was a college, which said, until I went to try on my shaitan, it didn't register. When I went to do that, whoa, this is real. It's really happening. there's a certain feeling, and it registers, it penetrates, and it's a different kind of a feeling. So in order to have not just knowledge of Hashem, but that's a different level, and there's so much more merit to that. And one of the ways of reaching that is through a test. How does the test accomplish that? We'll have to leave that for tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Until then, try to avoid getting tested. Just stay in a good place.